All right, circumference. Just a friendly reminder that this week we started with probability, and then we moved into area of triangles, circumference, and area of circles. Once you finish area of circles, you should have finished the pathway. If you were not successful in any of the units, it might give you another try on its own. Otherwise, I'll assign it to you. A little vocabulary. Hopefully, circles are not completely new to any of us, but circumference is basically the perimeter of a circle. So I know that you've worked with perimeter on other shapes, and so it's just a fancy name to name the perimeter of a circle because you can't exactly add up all the sides when it's one solid line. Pi, it's spelled P-I, or it has this little symbol right here. You've probably seen that symbol on a calculator before. It's the ratio of the circumference in relation to the diameter. So we use 3.14 to replace it, especially when we don't have calculators available to us. So you'll see 3.14 a lot. Radius and diameter, they both refer to a line segment in the circle. A radius is halfway through the circle, so it goes from the middle to the outside, and diameter is the distance all the way across the circle. So we'll refer to those terms a lot. Diameter is twice of the radius. So when you're given one, you're really given both parts. All right, so here's some pictures that might help a little bit. Circumference is the perimeter of the circle, so the distance around. Diameter goes all the way across, and radius only goes halfway. Pi is the number that we use. It is an irrational number, meaning that it never ends. It just keeps going and going and going and going and going. And it's the ratio of the circumference of a circle to diameter. So that creates our formulas. Circumference has two formulas because one is given with the diameter and the other is given with the radius. Personally, I always use the one with diameter because if I'm given the radius, I can go ahead and make it into a diameter by multiplying by 2. So to me, it's a little bit easier to only remember one equation. You can also work backwards. So if they give you the circumference, you can work backwards to find the diameter, or you can work backwards to find the radius. So real quick, we're going to create our formulas for working backwards. So if my formula for circumference is C equals pi times diameter, then to find diameter by itself, you're going to isolate the variable, meaning you want to get this variable by itself. Well, I know you know how to do this because we've already solved equations this year. So if pi is being multiplied times diameter, what is the inverse operation? Division. So we're going to divide by pi, and what you do to one side, you must do to the other. So then these are going to be 1. Pi over pi equals 1. So diameter is going to be equal to the circumference divided by pi. So pretty much every formula you use, you can rearrange to isolate different variables. You'll get into that when you get up to algebra, but solving equations can help you in many, 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 many parts of the math game. So to find radius, we know that circumference equals 2 times pi times r. And the reason this is true is because we know that diameter is all the way across the circle and radius is only halfway. So 2 of the radiuses, radii, equals the diameter. So if it was pi times diameter, then it has to be pi times radius times 2. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing we did last time. If 2 and pi are being multiplied by r, the inverse operation is to divide. And you can actually divide them at the same time. So we're going to take those to this side. What you do to one side, you have to do to the other. These equal 1, and then I have my radius is equal to circumference divided by 2 times pi. Okay, so these two formulas are going to be very helpful to you today. If you know how to take a screenshot, you could go ahead and do that, or I'm going to post the video so you can always replay to this point if you need to. And let's get working. All right, the diameter of the circle is 5 inches. What is the radius? Okay, so remember radius is only halfway across the circle. So what is half of 5? 2.5. Okay, so the radius is 2.5. What is the circumference? Well, we're going to use our formula. C equals pi times diameter. They gave us the diameter, and we, for the purpose of the unit, are going to use 3.14 as pi. So we need to multiply 3.14 times 5. And I apologize, last time I messed up on my multiplication, so hopefully this time I don't. 7, 5 times 3 is 15. 15. Oh, I didn't write this one on my paper, but I think I did it right. We have 2 decimal places. So the circumference is 15.7. Okay. And sometimes you can estimate your circumference. Like if the answer choices aren't close together at all, you can ask yourself, what is 5 times 3? And then you know it has to be roughly close to 15. And if your answer choices are way far apart, then that could be very helpful. Next example, circumference in the real world. If you're using a basketball and you know the radius is 4 inches, so r equals 4. If r equals 4, what is the diameter? Well, remember radius goes halfway across. So if I go the full way across to find my diameter, I need to multiply 4 by 2. So my diameter is 8. Okay, so what's the circumference? Well, C equals pi times diameter, and that is going to be on your formula chart, at least for a while. I think when you get to algebra, it falls off. We know in this case, our pi is 3.14, and our diameter is 8. We're going to go ahead and multiply that out. 4 times 8 is 32, carrier 3. 8 times 1 is 8, 9, 10, 11, carrier 1. 8 times 3 is 24, plus 1 is 25. I had 2 decimal places, so I'm going to return my 2 decimal places. And my circumference equals 25/1200ths. Okay, if I wanted to make sure that my decimal place was in the right spot, I would just ask myself roughly, what is 3 times 8? And that's 24. So my answer of 25 makes sense. On to our tree stump. The circumference of this stump is an estimated 34 inches. Okay, so the distance around this tree stump is roughly 34 inches. What formula can be used to solve for the diameter? Well, if you remember back a couple slides when I told you to take a screenshot or to come back to it, I told you we'd use this again. When we rearranged our equation, we had C equals pi times D, and then we divided by pi to isolate the diameter. Okay, so C divided by pi equals diameter. There's only one that looks like that with just the opposites equal signs. Okay. Now they want us to use that to estimate the diameter. So if circumference is 34 and pi is 3.14, then we are going to use division to figure out about how many inches. So you're 34 and then you're 3.14. Remember, you cannot divide with a decimal on the outside, so we are going to add a decimal or just emphasize the decimal behind the 34 because it's a whole number. And then we're going to move it twice so that it's gone from this number out here. Okay, so 314 can go into 34,000 or 340 one time. 314 subtract, you get 260. Well, after you bring down the 0. Okay, then you can't put 314 into 260, so we are actually going to, oops, put that in the wrong spot. Sorry about that. We are going to add another 0 and then bring it down. And then 314 can go into 2600 about 8 times. And that's going to give me 2512. And yes, I have a remainder, but this is enough to answer the question. 10.8 is closest to what? 10 or 11? I choose 11 because $10.80 is closer to $11. All right, we got 2 more examples. You measure your mom's silver hoop earrings and find the circumference to be 6.28 inches. So 6.28 equals C. What is the radius? So they want us to find the distance from here to here. And we know the distance all the way around is 6.28. So if you recall back on that probably second slide when we rearranged, we found that the radius equals C divided by 2 times pi. Okay, they gave us the C as 6.28, and we're going to divide that by 2 times 3.14. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and simplify the denominator because a fraction bar is the same thing as a grouping symbol. So you want to complete the numerator and the denominator first before you divide. So when I do that, it gives me 6.28 still on top. But if you'll notice, 2 times each one of those numbers also gives me 6.28. And any number divided by itself equals 1. So the radius equals 1 inch. Okay? So 6.28 divided by 6.28 equals 1 whole. So the radius of the earring is 1 inch. Last example for circumference is the distance from your house to the park is 125 feet. If your bike wheel has a diameter of 18 inches, how many times will it turn on your ride to the park? So this is a little bit more complex. We're talking about her bike rotating and it hits the pavement, and the part that hits the pavement is the distance around the outside. So that's what makes it circumference. The distance to the park is 125 feet, and our diameter, which means our circumference, is going to be in inches. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to multiply 125 times 12 because there's 12 inches in a foot, and I want to know how many inches it is to the park. So when I multiply that, I get 1,500. And I'm going to come back to that later in the problem. So first, we want to find the diameter of the bike tire, the distance around, or I'm sorry, the circumference. They already gave us the diameter. And it is pi times diameter. We know that 3.14 is pi and the diameter is 18 inches. So we're going to go ahead and multiply that out. Okay. 8 times 4 is 32. 8, 9, 10, 11. 24, 25. 1 times 4 is 4. 1 times 1 is 1. And 1 times 3 is 3. Combine them. And we get 1, 2. 1, 2. 56 and 52 hundredths. But if it's a total of 1,500 inches to the park, we need to see how many times her tire is going to spin to get this number of inches. So we're going to go ahead and divide that out. And I'm going to spare you the time of the long division and show you that 1,500 divided, oops, wrong button, divided by 56 and 52 hundredths is 26.5. So her tire is going to have to spin 26 and a half times to get her to the park.